What was the evidence that was presented on that Ted Cruz, a senator for like decades, is going to be an open criminal? And why would the judge make that decision? Or is that an abuse of his discretion? Any such request would have required a warrant, which we did not receive. No, but you still gave him information illegally.
They were also in the background protecting Joe Biden from the American people with the auto pen investigation and then silencing the American people through social media, strong-arming media companies to silence the voices of Americans.
Jack Smith crumbled when AT&T pushed back on his little spying scam. We now have documents that have been released from Chuck Grassley that show the responses to Chuck Grassley's letter. Remember, 8 U.S. senators and 1 representative got spied on by Jack and his thugs, and they demanded to know why Verizon and why AT&T gave them those records when there's all sorts of protections that should have prohibited that from happening. And so we've got 2 letters here that have come out. One, as you can see, is from AT&T over here in the top left. The other one is coming out from Verizon right here. Now, the Verizon letter is much bigger than the AT&T letter because the AT&T letter confirms they didn't give anything over. And Ted Cruz confirmed that to us when he came out from the Senate Judiciary Committee and said, yep, Judge Boasberg approved a subpoena to get my phone records, and then AT&T rejected that. And so they're responding now from Verizon. They have to explain, because Verizon did hand over a bunch of records, why they did that. But of course, this is one of the letters that also came in, and look who signed off on this one. So AT&T sent this one in response, and look at this judge's name right here. Judge Boasberg, there it is in writing. But a little bit of background here from Just the News. They say Senate Judiciary Chairman Grassley and his office yesterday released Verizon and AT&T's responses to Jack Smith's subpoenas. Recent documents have shown that they investigated hundreds of Trump allies. We saw over 400 Republicans, 197 subpoenas, 1,700 pages of documents, a total insane dragnet all over America. New records from Verizon and AT&T show how Verizon was willing to just, here you go. But AT&T objected, and once they did, Jack Smith crumbled like a little baby. Both companies were also given non-disclosure orders, which were signed by Judge James Boasberg, who should be impeached immediately, who ordered the companies not to even notify the senators and the lawmakers that they did this. But Grassley provided the names of the lawmakers who were targeted. Looks like 10 senators in total, including Marsha Blackburn and Senator Rick Scott. But some of the records weren't delivered, as we'll see. So here is the letter back to Chuck Grassley, which he has now released. He says, from AT&T to Chuck Grassley, like, hey, sorry about, we got your letter. We know you're not happy about this. We know Tuberville is saying everybody belongs in jail. We know Marsha Blackburn is going to be coming after us in a minute. But here is our response. All right, Chuck, from AT&T. This letter responds to your October 11th letter to John Stanky regarding subpoenas sent by Jack Smith seeking phone records of members of Congress. We have received similar inquiries, both formal and informal, from the offices of other members, and we trust the following information is helpful. Okay, so it's like everybody is sending us letters. All right, Lindsey Graham, why did you give them my records? Now, here's what they say. Based on a review of our records, AT&T did not receive subpoenas from Jack Smith for phone records of the 9 members of Congress named in your letter. So we're trying to figure out the full universe of everybody. Most of the Congress people, the senators, it sounds like, are with Verizon. In May 2023, special counsel illegitimate Jack Smith sent AT&T a grand jury subpoena that included a request for phone records associated with AT&T accounts for 2 other members of Congress. However, when AT&T raised questions with Jack Smith's office about the legal basis for seeking these records of members of Congress, the special counsel did not pursue the subpoena further, and no records were produced because they knew it was illegal. Jack did, but he still moved forward with Verizon. And Verizon, their pathetic counsel, whatever was going on over there, or let's be clear, I would not doubt that there were people in Verizon's legal team that were very interested in helping Jack Smith. So they overlooked this clear illegality. AT&T said, oh no, what's your basis for this, Jack? And he's like, on second thought, actually, we don't really need it anymore. We're not going to look for it anymore. He said, yeah, get out. Come back when you have lawful purpose. And no records were produced to him. So why did Verizon give the others over? And who was a part of that decision process? For your convenience, attached is a copy of that subpoena and the associated non-disclosure order, which expired May 24. So in short, Chuck, based on our review of our files, AT&T has not produced any records or other information to illegitimate Jack relating to any member of Congress named in your letter, or for that matter, any member of Congress. So AT&T, well done. They didn't buckle to Jack Smith's pressure. Somebody was smart enough over there to say, these are senators. Like, this could backfire on us bigly. And there are rules that say you can't do this. So that came out from David Chor Zempa, and they copied all of these people. So all of these Trump's senators and representatives now get notice about this, but they released the document. And here is what came out from Jack Smith. So this is May 25th, 2023, from Jack Smith, illegitimate special counsel, not a real boy, not lawfully appointed, not lawfully confirmed by the Senate, and appropriating not hundreds of millions of dollars illegally. He sent this to people over at AT&T before they told him to shove it. They say, "Dear sir or madam, we're in lieu of personally appearing before a grand jury, we need some records." And signed by some hack from Jack Smith's team. I wonder who it was. Who signed it? Here's the order. This comes over in an application for a grand jury subpoena going into the District of Columbia. We know who resides over there. It's Judge Boasberg, the hack judge who has repeatedly overstepped his judicial bounds to interfere with the executive branch. It's not just me saying that. It's the Supreme Court who said, you were wrong. And he had to go back and then revise himself and then find some other excuse to call Trump and his DOJ as people who committed contempt. So he signs off on it, and we don't even know what Jack Smith presented to him that would justify the basis for non-disclosure, for not even telling the senators about this. He says, "This matter comes before my court. There was an application directing a provider, AT&T, not to notify any other person of the existence of this subpoena issued on behalf of a federal grand jury impaneled in DC," right? The court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure, if you tell them about this subpoena, it will result, not may, right? It's saying that Ted Cruz, who's, the subject of one of these subpoenas, Ted Cruz will destroy the evidence. Ted will tamper with the evidence. He might intimidate potential witnesses, and it could cause serious jeopardy to the investigation. What was the evidence that was presented on that Ted Cruz, a senator for like decades, is going to be an open criminal? And why would the judge make that decision? Or is that an abuse of his discretion and misconduct that warrants impeachment? Obviously it does. This is just beginning. Now, it is therefore ordered that the provider and its employees shall not disclose the existence of the subpoena to any other person except attorneys for provider, for AT&T, for the purpose of receiving legal advice for 1 year, unless the period of disclosure is later modified, further ordered, and stamped by Judge James Boasberg. We've seen, after Trump got elected, has been doing everything he can to stop the president from executing his duties as the president. So it's just a pattern, right? It's part and parcel of the same operation that we've been seeing from the very beginning when Jack Smith was originally appointed. So that came out May 25th, 2023. Trump has already announced, and they need to take out the entire apparatus. So he says, yep, here's a subpoena. Clerk signed off on it. It says, "Dear AT&T, please see the attachment. We want everything that you have and provide this information to us. Here's our request for communications and content." And they say, "We got a grand jury subpoena. It's compelled to disclosure. Okay, you have to give us this stuff because the judge said so, and you can't tell any of our elected officials about it." And they have a form for the custodian to sign off when he delivers the records. And here's what they want. Now, we don't know exactly who this one is for with the following identifiers, but they want subscriber information, names and addresses. They want everything. Okay. And this is probably the same form that Jack was submitting over to Verizon, and he was getting all of this stuff, I would imagine, from them. They want subscriber information, subscriber names, usernames, screen names, all addresses, all call detail records. Okay. Everything, all inbound and outbound calls, all text messages, all direct connect, voicemail messages, the length of the service, means and sources of payments. What credit cards did they use? What bank accounts did they use? And they're just going to follow the bouncing ball. And this, oh, okay, so now we have this, and he had a bad call. He called Alex Jones or something. And so we think that Alex Jones, blah, and they just follow the line. And maybe there was a payment that they need to investigate. What is that payment for? And they go investigate that, get a subpoena for the bank. And it's just a full enema of all of the senators. Telephone or instrument numbers, MAC addresses, all the identity numbers, records of session times and durations, temporarily assigned network addresses, IP addresses, and other information, basically everything. So in lieu of a personal appearance, you can just email us those documents, says Jack's goons, and we'll be happy about it. But AT&T didn't do it. AT&T said, no. What's your basis for that, Jack? We said, hey, actually, we raised questions with Jack Smith's office. What is your legal basis for this? They didn't respond anymore because they knew they didn't have a legal basis, and they all broke the law. They should all be in jail, including Boasberg. But here is what Verizon had to say. All right, Chuck Grassley, this one's a 5-pager. They say, hey, we're in trouble. I write in response to the letter that you sent to our CEO, Chuck. Your letter inquired about the legal process that Verizon received from Jack Smith about 9 congressional members on September 27, 2023 that probably mirrors the same subpoena and format and signature from Boasberg, from the FBI, and that was publicly released in redacted form. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide additional information. So we know that you have a bunch of records records. Let us explain. We appreciate the importance of these issues and recognize your valid concerns about the Senate's ability to perform its constitutional functions. Now, our research, says Verizon, into the legal process that we received related to the FBI identified a grand jury subpoena dated May 25, 2023, which I think was the exact same date of this subpoena, May 25, 2023. So I bet Boasberg is just signing all of them. Just go get it. So we got that May 25th from a DOJ attorney, still don't know who was assigned to Jack Smith's office, which was completely illegitimate. The subpoena listed 12 telephone numbers, but did not include the names or any other information about the users of the telephones. In reviewing the subscriber information for the 12 numbers, it appears that this subpoena is related to the FBI electronic communication. It requested subscriber information and call detail records for the period between J4 and J7-21. It did not include a request for surveillance or seek the content of the communications. Any such request would have required a warrant, which we did not receive. No, but you still gave him information illegally. Additionally, the subpoena included a non-disclosure order signed by a federal district judge called Boasberg, which required Verizon not to tell anyone. We're just following the law. Yeah. Verizon is required by law, when served with a valid grand jury subpoena, to give the information under U.S. code. Now, subpoenas generally do not include information that explain the facts, circumstances, or the subject. That was the case here. The subpoenas often include just the telephone number. That's all. And so Verizon, as part of our commitment to privacy, we have a team that carefully reviews each subpoena to ensure that it's facially valid. And they're like, oh yeah, perfect. All these, lib lawyers probably on their team are sitting around going, oh, Ted Cruz? Perfect, get him. Oh, Marsha Blackburn? Yeah. Tommy Tuberville? Yeah, get him. The subpoena we received was facially valid. Yeah. And we produced information as a result. Well, that's interesting. Did you get more than AT&T got? Because they said it wasn't valid. And they're also in the business of telecommunications. Nonetheless, with the benefit of hindsight and informed by Verizon's discussion with Senate leadership over the year, going forward, we're going to make the following changes to our practices because you caught us with the hand in the cookie jar. Total scam. Escalation, they say, well, law enforcement demands for records. Here's the changes we're going to make after we violated the right to privacy and the separation of powers and federal law by handing over these records to Jack Smith's goons. They say law enforcement demands for records related to a line known to be associated with the sergeant at arms will be escalated to our legal department. These weren't escalated to the legal department, so they just have a bunch of maybe non-lawyers who are like, does it check the boxes? Does it look like it's signed by a judge? Oh, looks good. Fill the request. And senior leaders who are empowered to intervene before the records are produced. We'll work with Senate leadership to identify the non-lines that are personal and campaign lines so that we don't give records from senators. Note that Verizon often does not independently know what lines are whatever. Verification. Upon receipt of a law enforcement demands, we're going to contact the law enforcement agency or the prosecutor to verify that they wanted these records of a Senate member account. Say, are you sure? This is a senator. If the law enforcement demand does not include a non-disclosure order and it comes through to our desk, we will provide notice to the subscriber and they can challenge the enforcement demand. And for non-Senate member accounts, we'll also work with the sergeant at arms to provide more notice. They're also going to give more notice. All of this is like, yeah, sorry, we're going to make some very important changes and we promise this isn't going to happen again. Hey, that's fine. We want to know why you did it, and the people who did it should be held responsible. For other law enforcement demands, we will provide notice to the subscriber and work with the Senate sergeant at arms. It's like, okay, great. On that, we'll continue this practice and notify subscribers, and we've made these changes. In February 2025, once they realized that Trump won and he's going to be coming in and all this is probably going to be coming out, based on discussions, we established a process to identify future legal process related to Senate lines. Now, in addition, this summer, at the request of the Senate sergeant at arms, Verizon researched whether it had received legal process over the prior 4 years for any other Senate lines. We did identify the process for 15 lines. The May 25th subpoena from Jack was not on that list, even though 2 numbers that are Senate lines were included in that subpoena. This was a mistake due to human error recently discovered while researching the subpoena. What was the mistake? We understand the importance of these issues and regret the error. Oh man, we regret the error. I'm so sick of these companies because they also just happened, due to clerical error, lose the pipe bomber data on that key moment, like that key 12-hour window. Somebody was going to copy it and send it to the FBI, all corrupted. Human error. Oops. Verizon will make a disclosure with this and other information. Your letter inquired as to the information that Verizon provided. On June 6, Verizon produced records for all but one of the telephone numbers, gave them everything. Verizon produced subscriber information and call detail records pertaining to the date range. The records included everything: billing statements, subscriber name and address, address, account number, bill amount, type of mobile device, time, date, duration of the calls. Lindsey Graham's freaking out. Made during the 4 days within the subpoena's range. The originating and receiving telephone numbers for each call, the city and state of the cell tower that initially connected the calling, the subscriber information also included in the account, contact info, method of payment, names of authorized account users, length of service, type of phone, phone number, device identifiers, everything for all the senators shifted right over to Jack's closet. Now, your letter also inquired whether the subpoena was accompanied by a non-disclosure order, whether the affected congressional members were notified, whether the order is still in place, why the affected members were not notified. Now, as noted, they said, well, the judge said it's a non-disclosure order, and so we just did it. This NDO prohibited us from notifying anyone, and so we didn't. Accordingly, we did not notify the relevant members because a hack judge like Boasberg signed off on it. The NDO Verizon received was dated and it was effective 1 year, and so we don't know if the government extended it or not. So your letter inquired whether congressional members other than the 9 that you listed that were the subject of the subpoenas that we know about also were included. The subpoena did include a telephone number, which based on our research over the past few days appears to be a consumer line, not one procured through the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms contract with Verizon, used by a congressional member not listed on the FBI's electronic communication. So maybe even overbroad, asked for somebody that they shouldn't have been asking for. The May 25 subpoena also included a Senate landline telephone number that appears to be currently assigned to a congressional member who's not even in the FBI communication. There were no records in this range for Verizon to produce with respect to that landline telephone number. And who was that? And why did Jack Smith try to go tap the phones of a Senate landline from the executive branch? It was run by Joe Biden. Merrick Garland admitted that he was not lawfully appointed by the president. There's no independent special counsel branch. So he worked for Joe, and they were spying on Republican senators. And now Verizon's like, yeah, we gave them everything. Your letter requested that Verizon provides you with a legal process that Verizon received, the NDO, and all other things. The NDO itself was filed under seal, so nobody could see it because they're cowards, unless otherwise ordered by the court. And why would the court unseal any of this? Okay, all this, by the way, has been provided to us via whistleblowers, according to Ron Johnson, the senator. So it's not coming out from internal documents. We have people who are giving and leaking these documents to Congress. A lot of it is still under seal. Of course, the FBI and the DOJ should be in possession of Jack Smith's original request, and they could disclose all of that to us. Hopefully they are working on that. The DOJ would know, and they say that right there, about the subpoena and the NDO, whether they remain under seal. They should have the files. So we say from Robert S. Fisher, Senior Vice President for Relations and Public Affairs, I don't give this high mark. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with the Senate on these important issues, and we can provide your staff with additional updates. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. First of all, their contract should be canceled with Verizon immediately. Whatever that Senate Sergeant-at-Arms contract is, like, you're done. And Verizon, the people who were involved in this process should be hauled in front of a committee, just like the Watergate hearings, and asked questions. Names of everybody who was in the approval process. And what was their bias? What was their partisanship? Because this was a conspiracy against the rights of the senators in an effort to attack Trump and Republicans, which was a conspiracy against our rights as well. And so hopefully we're getting some very, very close scrutiny on this. But Marsha Blackburn was out earlier this week talking specifically about Verizon. She said, why didn't Verizon challenge the subpoena? We just saw AT&T did, and as soon as they did, Jack Smith backed down because he knew he didn't have a basis for it. It was illegal. Their lawyers at AT&T said, are you crazy? We're not doing that. Are you nuts? But Verizon just wanted to hand it over because they probably had an ulterior motive in the outcome of the disclosure. Here's Marsha says, these phone carriers and companies are complicit in Jack's spying scandal, and they owe the American people answers.
I'm one of those senators that did have their records revealed. Verizon is my wireless carrier, and Verizon never challenged, never moved to quash. They complied with the subpoena that went forward on our records. Now, Ted talked about the speech and debate clause. This is also a violation of our First Amendment and Fourth Amendment right. It is a violation of the separation of powers. It is a violation of the Stored Communications Act. I am looking forward to bringing Jack Smith before us. I am looking forward to bringing the wireless companies before us and finding out exactly what happened. No citizen of the United States should ever be subject to treatment like this.
No, they shouldn't. And many have. And the senators weren't too upset about that until their phones got gobbled up in the Jack Smith scam. But I hope that they put their money where their mouth is, man. And I hope they drag all these people in because I can just envision it. They're just sitting there. Wow, Oh no, well, we did our job. It looks like it's signed by a judge. There's nothing we can do. Here you go, Jack. Good luck. That is completely inappropriate, and they should be investigated accordingly. But Byron Donald says, with all of this happening, it's time to impeach Judge Boasberg. We saw his name on the subpoenas, and there is momentum growing around this effort. Here's what Byron had to say over on Fox Business.
We should know. Number one, I think it was Judge Boasberg was the judge who signed off on all this stuff. He needs to lose his seat as a judge.
Right.
That needs to go. Number two, they need to be called into Congress. But the third part is, because Congress will happen, we'll do that stuff. The Department of Justice is really going to have to go through this. And if there were criminal violations, they have to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is worse than Watergate. As much as everybody wants to talk about Watergate and everything around Richard Nixon, this is significantly worse, because while they were using the judicial system to go after their political rival, they were also in the background protecting Joe Biden from the American people with the auto pen investigation, and then silencing the American people through social media, strong-arming media companies to silence the voices of Americans. This is the most corrupt presidential administration, the Biden administration, in the history of our country. Heads need to roll.
That's right, man. Byron Donalds is exactly right. And he made a good point that they were not only prosecuting Republicans and unleashing hell on 400 plus entities, 197 subpoenas, the list goes on, senators, House representatives, landlines, and more, but they were also covering up for Joe. And the whistleblowers, Joseph and Gary, who wrote this book called Whistleblowers versus the Big Guy, available at truthvpower.com or on Amazon, they explained exactly that Biden was covering up. These people were exposing the cover up of the Biden crime. So they were creating crimes against Republicans and protecting their own people against their own crimes. And we're, of course, very happy to see that the Senate is now on the case. We'll keep our eye on this. More documents are going to be coming out, and we want answers on who was complicit in this massive conspiracy against America.